go win, go win, go win, go win, man, go win.
We begin the show in the Queen City as the Detroit Lions dominated the Cincinnati Bengals 37-24 here at Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati. It was a Lions takeover downtown. I've never seen so much blue and silver in my life. It seemed as if the Lions fans took over not only the city and downtown Cincinnati, but they took over Paycor Stadium as well. As for the Lions, Jared Goff, he went 19 for 23. He threw for 258 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 8 receptions, 100 receiving yards. Cincinnati native David Montgomery had 18 carries, 65 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. And he also threw a touchdown as well. For the Bengals, Jake Browning, he went 26 of 40. He threw for 251 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Jamar Chase had 6 receptions, 110 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns for Jamar Chase. So, as I watched the Lions-Bengals game yesterday, I watched this game downtown at the Banks, and as I watched the game and just participated in the Bengals tailgate, which was a great tailgate, but again, the Lions fans did invade downtown Cincinnati. But when it came to the actual game between the Detroit Lions and the Cincinnati Bengals, let me be very clear. The Detroit Lions dominated the Cincinnati Bengals Sunday afternoon at Paycor Stadium. I know if you are a Bengals fan, you could look at the fourth quarter, a quarter in which the Bengals, they outscored the Lions 21-9. The Bengals had 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but honestly, it was a bunch of empty calories. It was a bunch of garbage time yards and stats put up by Jake Browning, Jamar Chase, and the Cincinnati Bengals as a football team. This game was over in the third quarter when the Detroit Lions took a commanding 28-3 lead. That was all she wrote in this ball game, because I believe in the fourth quarter, the Detroit Lions, they took their foot off the gas. And in the NFL, once you get off to a big lead and you have a comfortable lead, specifically in the second half, teams, they take their foot off the gas because they don't want to get players injured. And the Detroit Lions not only have aspirations to win the NFC North, but they have Super Bowl aspirations. And so the Detroit Lions, once they went up 28-3 and they realized, oh, we are going to win this game, I believe the Lions took their foot off of the gas pedal, and that allowed the Bengals to score 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter in a game that the outcome was decided well before the 000s came up on the scoreboard at Paycor Stadium. Okay? Like, the final score was 37-24, but this game was over in the third quarter when the Detroit Lions took a commanding 25-point lead over the Bengals when they went up 28-3. And for me, when I think about the Cincinnati Bengals, I honestly believe that Joe Burrow getting injured could have been a blessing in disguise. And let me explain why. I believe that Joe Burrow is a top 4 quarterback in the NFL. I believe when it comes to elite quarterbacks, there are 4 elite quarterbacks in the NFL. That's Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. And so I believe that Joe Burrow is a elite quarterback. And not only did he win and has he won in the NFL, Joe Burrow was a winner at the University of LSU. He won a national championship with Jamar Chase, with Justin Jefferson as his receivers. And so Joe Burrow, since he's started playing quarterback at the collegiate level, has been an elite quarterback. But I believe because of Joe Burrow's greatness, he has done a tremendous job at covering up a lot of the Cincinnati Bengals deficiencies as a football team. And I believe that since he came into the NFL, Joe Burrow has made a dysfunctional organization actually play like a real Super Bowl contender when he's actually played on the field. Because I'm looking at the Bengals since Joe Burrow got injured week 2 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Cincinnati Bengals have gone downhill since that week 2 matchup against the Jaguars. I'm still trying to figure out how the hell the Bengals actually came back and beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in that game. But we are looking at a Cincinnati Bengals team that without Joe Burrow, they are 8-22. And so that's Zach Taylor as a head coach without Joe Burrow, which is something that I specifically want to talk about tonight. I know Zach Taylor has led the Cincinnati Bengals to 2 AFC Championship game appearances back-to-back in 2023 and 2022. I know Zach Taylor, for his career, he is 48-55-1, which means he's won 47% of his games. And he's probably forgotten more football than I'll ever know. But Joe Burrow has made Zach Taylor look like an elite head coach at times throughout his career. And I believe because Joe Burrow now is no longer playing and is injured, I believe that Zach Taylor has been exposed. And not only did Joe Burrow cover up a lot of the Cincinnati Bengals deficiencies as a football team and make Zach Taylor look better as a head coach than he actually is, he's gotten other head coaches jobs as well. Brian Callahan is the head coach for the Tennessee Titans. And Brian Callahan, so far since he's been the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, has not been a good NFL head coach. He was on the verge yesterday of falling to 0-5 to start the season, but the running back from the Arizona Cardinals, I can't think of his name is hard to pronounce. This dude decides to toss the football out of his hands as he's running across the goal line, and the Cardinals were on the verge of being up 28-6 over the Titans yesterday in that game. And if they would have went up 28-6, that game would have been over. And instead, it's a touchback. The Titans get the football back, and Cam Ward leads the Titans, and they come back from a 15-point deficit and beat the Arizona Cardinals 22-21. But Brian Callahan was well on his way to being 0-5 to start the 2025 campaign in his second year as a head coach. And I say all that to say that I'm looking at a Zach Taylor. Yes, Zach Taylor led the Cincinnati Bengals to a conference championship game appearance in 2021 and in 2022. Both years, the Bengals won the AFC North, and in 2021, they made the Super Bowl. But dare I say that the Cincinnati Bengals elite skill position group featuring Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who I believe is the best tandem at the wide receiver position. Yes, I'm taking Jamar Chase and T. Higgins over Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Yes, I'm taking Jamar Chase and T. Higgins over A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I believe that the Cincinnati Bengals made the Super Bowl because they had an elite quarterback in Joe Burrow and two elite receivers in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and they made Zach Taylor look better than he actually is as an NFL head coach. Because if I have Joe Burrow as my quarterback, if I have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins as my receivers, and I got Tyler Boyd, who was the slot receiver at the time for the Bengals, I am going to look better than I actually am when it comes to play calling. But since Joe Burrow went down with his turf toe injury, it's forced Zach Taylor to be more creative as an offensive mind, and Zach Taylor has come up short in that department. Because when I look at these other teams in the NFL and these other coaches who are dealing with injuries, I watched Thursday night the San Francisco 49ers. Kyle Shanahan did not have Brock Purdy. He did not have Jawan Jennings. He did not have Ricky Pearsall. He did not have George Kittle. And the San Francisco 49ers went out there and they beat the LA Rams, who were healthy, in a Thursday night primetime game. And that was a prime example of how important coaching is in the NFL. And I believe right now, Zach Taylor should be dismissed of his duties as being head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, because he no longer has Joe Burrow to lean on. And so he's expected to be more creative offensively as an offensive mind and make things a little bit easier on Jake Browning. And he has not done that. I'm looking at Jake Browning. Jake Browning, this is his third career game with 3 interceptions. And I remember in 2023, people tried to convince me that Jake Browning was a top backup in the NFL. You look at his numbers, I can understand why. This was in 2023 when Joe Burrow was injured. Jake Browning had 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 1,936 passing yards, completing 70% of his passes. Ladies and gentlemen, that version of Jake Browning is no longer the quarterback that is playing for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's not that guy anymore. And I believe that defensive coordinators have film on Jake Browning, and that's the reason why Jake Browning is struggling the way that he currently is. When you come in as a backup quarterback, there's not much film on you, and these defensive coordinators, they're not studying or putting together game plans for backup quarterbacks. And I believe now that Jake Browning is actually the full-time starter for the Cincinnati Bengals, defensive coordinators are putting together game plans, and they are really, really exposing Jake Browning's weaknesses as a quarterback. In that matchup against the Lions yesterday, there were multiple times where Jake Browning threw passes in double and triple coverage, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is he doing? What is he doing? So the Cincinnati Bengals have a head coaching issue and a backup quarterback issue that is currently being exposed. And I believe that Joe Burrow has covered up for a lot of the Bengals' deficiencies over the years. Because we already knew coming into the season that they had a bad defense. We knew their defense was going to be bad, and their defense has not impressed me so far this year either. But I can't even put the struggles on the Bengals right now on their defense. I don't believe their defense is overall good, but because the offense is constantly going 3 and out, I can't put that on the Bengals defense right now. The Bengals have a problem right now at quarterback and as that head coach. That's the issue. And I believe that if you are a Cincinnati Bengals fan, you should want the Bengals to continue to lose games in blowout fashion so they can get rid of Zach Taylor at the end of the season. But the only problem for the Cincinnati Bengals is if the Bengals continue to fight back in games like they did yesterday against the Lions, Mike Brown will figure out a way to retain Zach Taylor at the end of the season. If you're a Bengal fan, you want games like how the Bengals played against the Vikings in week 3 when they got blew out 48-10 to the Vikings. If you're a Bengal fan, those are the results that you want. If they continue to get blew out, then maybe Mike Brown will make the right move and make the call to fire Zach Taylor at the end of the season. Now, it took him forever to fire Marvin Lewis. But I think the Cincinnati Bengals are in trouble, and I'm looking at their next few games. They lost yesterday against the Lions, so they're 2-3. They're going to lose to the Packers this week at Lambeau. They'll be 2-4 after that game. And then they got the Steelers week 7 here in a Thursday night matchup. Big shout out to Brandy and Monica. They'll be here that night. If you're a Bengal fan out there, you might as well sell your tickets. Instead of going to the Steelers-Bengals game, go and check out Brandy and Monica and Coco Jones. They're going to be on tour, and they'll be here Thursday, October the 16th. Go check them out. But I think the Bengals will lose their next 2 games for sure. So they'll be 2-5 heading into their matchup against the Jets in week 8. And they got a bye week 10. If they can beat the Jets though. With Jake Browning, they could beat the Jets because the Jets are awful right now. And so they got the Bears week 9. That's a game. That's a toss-up. Because I don't think the Bears are that good, but the Bengals are in trouble. They are in a world of trouble right now. As for the Detroit Lions, the Detroit Lions have been balling since their week 1 loss to the Green Bay Packers. The Detroit Lions have scored 174 points. That's the most through first 5 games of a season in franchise history. Those 174 points. And the Lions, in their history, they have had 4 consecutive games with 34 points or more. That is tied for the most in their franchise history. These 4 straight games where they've scored 34 points or more, that is an active streak. They had 34 points or more 4 times in 2024 and 4 times in the 1952 season. So this offense is playing at an elite level. And one of the reasons why they're playing at an elite level is because of Sonic and Knuckles. That's Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And I'm looking at Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. This is the most games with each scoring an offensive touchdown by a running back duo. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they have 14 games when each of them have scored an offensive touchdown. Only Emmitt Smith and Daryl Johnston has had as many games as a running back duo scoring touchdowns. So they're both getting into the end zone, and they are playing some great football, and Jared Goff is in a zone. Yesterday against the Bengals, the man goes 19 for 23, 258 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, quarterback rating was 153. And for the game, the Lions had 23 first downs. They had 118 rushing yards, 247 passing yards, 365 passing or total yards for the game. And they dominated this game, honestly. And I feel like the Detroit Lions were toying yesterday with the Cincinnati Bengals. They were toying with the Bengals. And so they are playing some great football. They've won 4 straight games, and they have honestly been playing some of the best football in the NFL. They really, really have. So big shout out to Jared Goff, Dan Campbell, and the Detroit Lions. They are now 4-1 on the season. And that's going to be an interesting race in the NFC North between the Lions and the Packers as we head towards the second half of the season. But those are my thoughts on Lions-Packers yesterday. Bengals are in trouble, and I think it is time for the Bengals to move off of Zach Taylor, and Jake Browning has regressed as the Cincinnati Bengals backup quarterback, and Joe Burrow covered up a lot of Bengals deficiencies so far during his career as a Cincinnati Bengals quarterback. Those are my thoughts on the Lions-Bengals.